Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for our national anthem as the Armed Forces Color Guard from the Military District of Washington presents this symbol of our country. Please welcome the Executive Director of the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation and Association, Mike Cavender.
Well, good evening, everybody. I hope you all having a good evening tonight. We're having a storm coming in, so, but I think this low, we're safe. Welcome to the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation's 24th Annual First Amendment Awards. Thank you so much again for joining us. It's going to be a great evening. Let me, before we begin, introduce our distinguished head table. Down here, starting from my left, the chairman of RTDNF from Michigan Radio, Vince Duffy. Chief Global Affairs correspondent for ABC News, Martha Raddatz. And this year's First Amendment Service Award winner from ABC News, Robin Sproul. The senior executive producer, prime time for NBC News, David Corbo. The 2014 Leonard Zeidenberg Award winner from NBC News, Lester Holt. Lorraine Wallace. And the host for this evening, from Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace. Turn over here. The recipient of the First Amendment Award on behalf of the Associated Press, AP CEO Gary Pruitt. The First Amendment Leadership Award honoree tonight from Gannett Broadcasting, Dave Luigi. Who's got the most tables in the room? And the Senior Vice President of News for Gannett Broadcasting, Rob Minnie. The winner of the 2014 Lifetime Achievement Award, CBS News White House correspondent, Bill Plante. All right, who was louder? And the senior executive producer for CBS News, Susan Zirinsky. And my wife, Kay Cavender. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to take just a few moments to update all of you on the activities of the Foundation this past year, activities which could not take place without your continued support at events like this. Besides our important work on behalf of upholding First Amendment freedoms and values, the RTDNF serves as the educational and the training arm of the Radio, Television, Digital News Association. With your generous help, we're able to continue to provide much-needed scholarship and fellowship assistance to deserving future journalists in colleges and universities all around the country. In your program book tonight, you will meet this year's class of winners and learn a little more about their aspirations in pursuing journalism careers. I should mention this group is sharing nearly $35,000 in scholarship and fellowship aid provided through the income on endowments from our generous donors, some of which are here this evening. Besides the scholarship program, RTDNF provides professional training and resources through programs we offer to such groups as state broadcast associations and professional conferences. We also continue to expand our program partnerships with such organizations as the Rios Berlin Commission, the National Endowment for Financial Education, and new this year, the International Center for Journalists. On the association side, our 2014 Edward R. Murrow Awards again set a record this year for entries, attracting thousands in what has become one of the most prestigious competitions in our business. And as we look ahead to September in Nashville, Tennessee, we'll again join forces with the Society of Professional Journalists for our annual Excellence in Journalism Conference. In a first for the membership association, RTDNA, this year we established a new corporate membership category. It's designed as a way for broadcast and digital companies to support RTDNA through group enrollments of their news department's leadership teams. And I am very pleased to thank Nexstar Broadcasting and Gannett Broadcasting for being the first two companies to provide RTDNA and their news directors with this very important affiliation. Now, if you'll permit me, I'd like to ask Jerry Walsh, who is Director of Local Content for Nexstar, to offer just a few words on why his company made that decision to become RTDNA's very first corporate member. Jerry?
Thanks, Mike. Nexstar Broadcasting was proud to be associated with RTDNA, and we furthered that through our corporate membership. The investment that we made was an investment in journalism and in the local communities that we have the privilege to serve on a daily basis. We believe in keeping it local and covering news that matters to our viewers and to our users in all of our markets. 38 markets in our company currently produce news, and that number will grow to 39 next month with our news expansion in Marquette, Michigan. In all of the markets, the news directors are teaching the next generation of First Amendment protectors. As a company, we wanted to give our news managers additional training and development resources, and we found that in the RTDNA. News directors can access information on news ethics, on guidelines on social media, training materials for their newsrooms. They have a partner when it comes to fighting for open access to our courtrooms. And with each entry we make into the Edward R. Murrow Awards competition, we receive a discount because of that membership. We're excited to be involved with RTDNA. We thank the association for being with us here today. We look forward to greater successes in all of our markets, and we encourage our colleagues to follow suit and join RTDNA. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay. So here's the plug. If any of your companies would like to join us in our corporate partnership, please see me tonight or give me a call at RTDNA. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce the chairman of the Radio Television Digital News Foundation, News Director of Michigan Radio, Vince Duffy.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here tonight to celebrate our honorees and to support the work of the Radio Television Digital News Foundation. As Mike said, this foundation provides scholarships to electronic journalists and training as well. It also supports journalistic excellence and fights to defend our First Amendment freedoms. And on occasions such as tonight, we honor those whose work and careers are examples of that excellence and of that commitment to press freedoms. This year, RTDNF awarded more than a dozen scholarships and fellowships to students and working journalists. And I'd like to recognize a few that are here with us tonight. Shantae Lands from WPRI-TV, WNAC-TV received the Michelle Clark Fellowship. Shantae, wave your hand. And next to her is Kristen Wolf of Salisbury University, and she was awarded the Lou and Carol Prado Sports Reporting Scholarship. So congratulations to you both. Those are just two of the many people who are helped by your support of RTDNF. While I'm recognizing people, I would also like to take a moment to welcome FCC Commissioner who is with us tonight. Mignon Clyburn is with us. Are you here this evening? Could you stand up and be recognized? It's been a busy year for those of us who value the First Amendment and what it means for the press freedoms in our country. This year, the organization Reporters Without Borders, they ranked the United States number 46 on the World Press Freedom Index. That puts us right behind Romania and just ahead of Haiti. It was a year when the Department of Justice seized the phone records of journalists at the Associated Press and Fox News, when digital journalists discovered that they could be jailed for providing links on the web to documents that they didn't steal, and when the FCC proposed visiting all of our newsrooms to ask us questions about our philosophy and our story selection. Well, we have made progress on some of these issues, and others still require some work. But tonight is about celebrating success. Tonight, we are here to honor those who work to defend our press freedoms and those who have shown us the great journalism that can be accomplished because of them. Our master of ceremonies tonight is Fox News Sunday anchor Chris Wallace. Before joining Fox, Chris spent many years working for ABC and for NBC. He has won a shelf full of major broadcasting awards, and RTDNA was proud to present him last year with our Paul White Award. But before we get into tonight's program, everyone please enjoy your dinner, and thank you again for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host for this evening, the anchor of Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace.
Good evening. Good evening, and what a great evening it is. What a great way to honor 5 remarkable leaders in our industry for their commitment to the First Amendment and to journalistic integrity. You know, and this is a wonderful dinner, there's a lot of planning and hard work that goes into making an event like this so successful. So please join me in thanking Nukla Rubel of the RTDNF staff. And the 2014 Dinner Committee for putting together such a stellar night. I'd like to ask all of them to please stand up and now give them your applause. I'd also like to take this moment to recognize the members of the Board of Directors and Trustees who ensure that the Foundation's mission of excellence in journalism and a free electronic press is upheld. I'd like to ask the current and past board members to please stand, and let's give them a round of applause. This is not the Oscars. We're going to move this right along, so it's time for our first presentation of the night. The First Amendment Award honors an outstanding individual or organization that champions the First Amendment. Former President and CEO of the Associated Press, Tom Curley, was scheduled to present this award, but he can't be here tonight, and so I'm going to do the honors. I think it's fair to say that Gary Pruitt and the Associated Press demonstrated what being a champion of the First Amendment really means when they stood up to the Department of Justice after the DOJ notified AP it had secretly swept up the records from almost 24 phone numbers over a 40-day period as part of a leaks investigation. Gary had taken the helm of AP less than a year before, but he was made for this fight. Trained as a First Amendment attorney, he and the AP hit back fast, and they hit back hard. The impact, as you know, was stunning. Before coming to AP, Gary was president and CEO of the McClatchy Company. He started his professional career in Miami, concentrating on First Amendment, libel, and public access issues for media companies like the New York Times and CBS. Joining McClatchy as general counsel, he managed the company's libel and First Amendment concerns. So as you can see, Gary was very well prepped for this fight and for continuing AP's long legacy of opposing government secrecy and advocating for the public right to know. Here are some highlights, a video that we want to play showcasing this formidable institution and its leadership.
It was sort of a normal Friday afternoon, and then I got an email from one of our corporate lawyers.
Thanks to an email from the Department of Justice, that Friday would turn out to be anything but normal. The Department of Justice had seized AP phone records for 40 days in 2012, around the time AP published a story about an al-Qaeda plot to put a bomb on a flight from Yemen to the United States. This was the first AP learned of a secret subpoena.
My main feeling was just a sense of complete shock at the broad nature of what they had done.
The scope of the seizure was enormous, and the secretive nature of it was exceedingly troubling. The DOJ, acting on its own, had given itself access to thousands upon thousands of AP's news-gathering calls. This was a clear example of government overreach with no check on prosecutorial power.
How can we fight back against this in some way when they already had the phone records?
So AP CEO Gary Pruitt, a First Amendment lawyer himself, sent a very public message.
What do you think their motive was?
I know what the message being sent is that if you talk to the press, we're gonna go after you. We're gonna go after these leakers. I don't know what their motive is, but I can tell you their actions are unconstitutional.
When push comes to shove, news organizations have to say that freedom of the press in the United States exists. The government cannot intrude on what we are allowed to do under the Constitution, and if that intrusion becomes too serious, then we stand up and we fight it.
We were all aware that the federal courts had eroded their protections for journalists over the years. Seeing the Department of Justice use the guidelines to bypass notice in the manner in which they did in a public investigation showed us just how bad and effective the guidelines were and how much work needed to be done to change them.
The DOJ has our records, and they've probably already used them as part of their investigation. So we can't unring that bell. But I'm pleased to tell you that the Justice Department has given us assurances that our phone records have been and will continue to be walled off and protected and used for no other purpose than the leak investigation. And we appreciate those assurances from DOJ. It doesn't excuse what they did, and we want to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
And thanks to AP's stand, the Department of Justice agreed to reforms that afford more protections to journalists than the courts have historically provided. Last month, the guidelines were signed by Attorney General Eric Holder. Had they been in place, it would have been much harder for the DOJ to seize AP's records.
Our chapter in this ongoing dispute was enormously important, both in terms of bringing this debate to public attention and also getting the Justice Department to acknowledge that there has to be a balancing act here, that this is not the government can just do whatever it wants and news organizations, are the debris in the road.
No one in this country should ever be prosecuted for committing journalism.
It kind of helps stiffen everybody's backbone if somebody stands up and says, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. And for Gary to do that, especially when he was so new in the job, I think just sent an enormous message, just not just across AP, but across the whole news industry. It kind of helps everybody else do this if somebody stands up and does it.
It is my great honor to present the First Amendment Award for 2014 to Associated Press. Here to accept, CEO Gary Pruitt.
Well, that was natural. I want to thank the RTDNF for this award, and I want to thank Chris Wallace for his generous introduction. Chris, as we know, is a First Amendment champion himself. And I want to thank Bob Schieffer for narrating the video. Everything Bob does resonates with class and style and substance. Of course, I accept this award. Yeah, and we can clap for Bob Schieffer. And of course, I accept this First Amendment award not for myself, but on behalf of the Associated Press, the great and glorious nonprofit news organization that reports the news for over half the world's population every day through other media, many of you here tonight. By the way, thank you for that. AP has been at the vanguard of not just reporting the news, but of advancing First Amendment rights and protecting journalists around the world since the 19th century. And the fight between AP and DOJ over the secret seizure of our phone records was significant for many reasons. What were they? Well, for one thing, we know that most likely my taxes will be audited this year. And I'm ready for that. But more seriously, because of the AP-DOJ dispute, the rules protecting journalists from the reach of federal prosecutors improved swiftly and substantially. And that's important because those are the rules, not the courts. Those rules are the ones that provide the bulwark of protection for journalists and for media companies when the federal government seeks information. And these new and stronger rules and protections will redound to the benefit of journalists in this country for decades to come, with the American public being the ultimate beneficiaries. And I'm very proud of that. And lastly, the Department of Justice made clear for the very first time, stating that they will not prosecute a journalist for doing his or her job. Tonight, we should all drink to that. Thank you very much.
Gary, again, congratulations. The First Amendment Service Award honors professionals in local or network news who work in an off-air management capacity and remain largely behind the scenes. In other words, our bosses. Here to present this award is the Chief Global Affairs Correspondent for ABC News, Martha Raddatz.
I am so proud to introduce my boss, Robin Sproul. Just before this began, I got a call from the big boss, Ben Sherwood, president of ABC News, and you always are a little nervous when the president of ABC News wants to talk to you, and he wanted me to say more than anything how proud he is of Robin tonight. We all are proud. I've spent the last couple of weeks walking around the Bureau asking people what they think of Robin, what I could say tonight, and they really weren't that helpful because everybody said the same thing. We all love Robin. She is down to earth. She manages to watch our backs. She is our boss, but she is our friend. There are a lot of people you kind of trust in this business, maybe 90%. I trust Robin 100%. She is a role model, a mentor. When you walk in her office, one of my colleagues had a great story. He said the first time he walked in her office, and he worked in television a long time, he walked in there and saw the big desk and thought, okay, I'm going to sit down. And Robin walked around that big desk, pulled up a chair, and sat down and had a great conversation with him. That's how she is. That's how Robin is. I love her. She has truly been a friend to me. She is also a great mother. Her daughters tonight told me that Robin Sproul was leaning in before it was trendy. I present a little more from my boss, Robin Sproul. I'm so proud of her.
On this week, these are the stars of ABC News.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos.
Anchors and reporters whose journalistic excellence define the news division. But in every great network, there's a great leader, and in Washington, that leader is Robin Sproul.
She is the heart and soul of ABC News Washington. She is the mentor, teacher, friend, and most important, leader for ABC News in Washington on the biggest stories of the day.
The dean of the Washington bureau chiefs, Robin's held the job for 21 years, the longest among all the networks. She's championed hundreds of journalists who come through these doors, including me. You don't see her on camera, but Robin's had a profound influence on ABC News. Her longevity comes from a commitment to be the best. That's what got her to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro 3 years ago, and for 2 decades guided her through the challenges of an ever-changing media landscape.
To be a good leader in this time, you've got to be flexible, you've got to be innovative. If you don't like change, you are not going to survive in the news business these days.
She's not a headline seeker or a glory grabber. You know, she's someone who really likes to get the job done and work in a very, patient, quiet way because it's not about her.
You could say Robin was destined for broadcast news. It's in her blood. Her great-great-uncle Charles Francis Jenkins was one of the inventors of television. In 1974, Robin graduated from college with a degree in bacteriology. But her love for germs turned to journalism when she took a non-paying position at a local ABC radio station.
And within hours, I thought, oh, this is what's been missing. This is really fun.
By 1981, she was the head of ABC's Washington Radio Network, and then President Roone Arledge promoted her to Washington bureau chief.
What do you think is going on?
As ABC's leader in Washington, press freedom and access to policymakers is always on Robin's front burner. Last year, after the Justice Department went after reporters in an aggressive pursuit of leakers, Robin fought back hard. She's now part of an Attorney General appointed committee that will maintain an ongoing dialogue with him on the rights of journalists.
She is one of the best people I ever worked with in managing out that kind of conflict for the good of who we all care about, which is the audience.
She is not afraid to stand up for a principle and to argue for it.
Robin negotiates well. She doesn't yell, she doesn't scream, she doesn't demand. She uses the velvet hammer.
Don't let Robin's smile and genteel way throw you off. She is fiercely competitive.
So many things have changed in the way we communicate. We're at a crucial moment in the history of the relationship between journalists, leakers, and the Department of Justice. And this is a time when I think dialogue has never been more important.
Freedom, 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 freedom.
And now we present my boss, ABC's Robin Sproul.
Martha, thank you for your very kind introduction. You see, the wonderful thing about being the behind-the-scenes person is you get to work with amazing in front of the camera people like Martha Raddatz. Anything that I've been able to do and will do in the future to help reporters and anchors like Martha Raddatz do their jobs with no interference, that makes my job worthwhile. And I'm fortunate to also work with great reporters like Jonathan Karl, Pierre Thomas, David Curley, Jeff Zeleny, Jim Avila, Susan Salney, Ann Compton, all supposedly here tonight. We'll see. I can't see you. and there is no finer group of reporters in this city. And I'm so fortunate in the colleagues I've had at ABC News the last 38 years I've been there. The producers, digital journalists, managers, and some others here tonight, you know what we have done together, and it's very important work, and it's work with a purpose. We are a great team. And I particularly want to give a shout out tonight to Carrie Smith, who is ABC's Senior Vice President for Editorial Quality, our standards person. No one at ABC has been more important in the struggle to do what's right and to fight the good journalistic causes that we fight than Carrie Smith, and she's been a very good friend to me for many years. And I want to thank my husband and my two daughters, Catherine and Anna, for being here and for always being enthusiastic and curious about the work I do. Also, it's a great honor to be on stage with these terrific award winners. Lester, I am a huge fan. And Bill Plante, you know how much I admire you and the work you've done covering the White House. We've been on many White House trips together back in the early days. And Gary and David, I'm so impressed by the work you do every day. And Chris Wallace, we go way back. We have some war stories to tell. Chris was at ABC, and we now compete against each other on Sunday mornings. Chris is an amazing, wonderful journalist and a fierce competitor. And I know that nobody comes to these black tie dinners to listen to a long speech by the behind-the-scenes person. It's okay. We're behind the scenes because we don't really want to be here. So trust me, I'm not going to talk for a long time. But there are a few important things I did want to say. And let's talk about the First Amendment a little bit and about that part that mentions freedom of the press. On Saturday, Secretary of State John Kerry addressed the journalists and guests at the annual Gridiron Dinner. Secretary Kerry said he was struck by the number of failed and failing states he sees as he now travels the world so much. And he cautioned that the worst he sees are occurring in places where there is an absence of accountability. No public dialogue, no free press. Knowledge is power, he noted, and the truth a great antidote to impunity. He remembered his wartime serving in Vietnam. He said, "We had reporters who rode with us on our boat. They didn't carry a gun, they carried a pen. And I learned that sometimes that's more powerful." And also in that Vietnam era, Justice Hugo Black wrote in an opinion, "In the First Amendment, the Founding Fathers gave the free press the protection it must have to fulfill its essential role in our democracy. The press was to serve the governed, not the governors. The government's power to censor the press was abolished so that the press would remain forever free to censor the government. The press was protected so that it could bear the secrets of government and inform the people. And now we are in this fast-moving digital age. The government's technical ability to serve as its own newspaper, network, photographer, going directly to citizens with a government-approved version of truth, has never been more possible. Just go to whitehouse.gov and take a look. They do their own newscasts, reported out by White House staff, articles, feature stories, etc. They look a lot like real news stories, and they're on the web. Washington bureau chiefs spend a lot of time these days fighting to get our own cameras and our reporters into events not only at the White House, but on campaigns and at government agencies. At some, admittedly rare, White House events, the only cameras allowed in have been government-controlled, causing many heated White House discussions with journalists and bureau chiefs. This is a fight we never give up, wanting to be the unbiased, ever-present eyes and ears of the American people. Jill Abramson and Lynn Downey, two of the most prominent and respected journalists of our time, have written articles or have spoken up about the excessive number of leak investigations by this administration and by the deployment of government's own media to avoid scrutiny by the press. Jill Abramson said the Obama administration is the most secretive of any administration she's covered going back to the early 80s. This is a situation deserving everyone's consideration. We're in a time in which anyone can be a broadcaster via social media, YouTube, live streaming, and the temptation for the government or for politicians to take control over their own news coverage is mighty, which raises so many other questions we face today as well. Exactly who is a journalist today? Every day brings another fight on this front. Should a blogger shooting video with a cell phone on Capitol Hill be subject to the same rules of conduct as a professional journalist, the same rules of access? Who deserves to be covered by reporter's privilege? Who would be protected by a federal shield law, should we ever get one? And who wouldn't be protected? We've talked a lot already about the AP and what they went through in the past year. And also don't forget Fox News reporter James Rosen, who was called a criminal co-conspirator under the Espionage Act of 1917 in order to gain access to his personal emails and phone records. These are troubling events, but explosive attention paid to them in the press caused the Justice Department, as we've already heard, to review policies and make some changes to pre-digital age procedures. In fact, next week, a group of journalists, some represented in this room tonight, will start regular discussions with the Attorney General about ways to continue to move forward on these issues. This is slow progress, but at least there's some movement. All of these issues require vigilance and constant attention, even as news bureaus in D.C., those that actually watch the government, shrink because of the changing news business models. More challenges of this digital age. But these are good fights to have, and as Thomas Jefferson wrote, our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost. Thank you so much for this award.
As Robin said, we worked together at ABC News for over a decade, and now you know why Martha Raddatz said what she said and why she's right. We all love Robin. RTDNF presents its Lifetime Achievement Award to individuals who make outstanding contributions over the course of a lifetime to journalism and, in particular, freedom of the press. I think you'll agree that this year's winner embodies the ideals of the First Amendment and of the RTDNF. Here to present the award is the Senior Executive Producer of CBS News, Susan Zirinsky.
You know, the Lifetime Achievement Award is not for one story, one exclusive, or one act of courage. It's really for a lifetime of stories, a lifetime of commitment. That's Bill Plante. I saw that commitment covering the White House for more than a decade with Plante. There'll be no stories about thrown walkie-talkies tonight. I just want to put your mind at rest. It's interesting to note that this award has only been given once before to another CBS correspondent, legendary Andy Rooney. That award was given posthumously. So, Bill, you're way ahead of the game right now. The Lifetime Achievement Award can be a little tricky. You kind of want to shout out, hey, it's not over. Are you sure you don't want to award me the Who to Watch as a Powerful Washington Insider Award or the Still Up and Coming Award? I'm proud to say for Bill, it ain't over, not by a long shot. Make no mistake about it, Bill Plante isn't pining for the good old days. For Bill, it's about Twitter. He's the one hanging out in the Facebook war room at the conventions. Amazing fact. Do you know that it was Bill Plante who asked after Ronald Reagan was shot, who's in charge? And Al Haig took to the podium and said those famous words, I'm in charge. Thank you for that historic memento. Almost everyone in this room knows Plante, senior White House correspondent for CBS, covering Reagan, Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama. Based in Washington since '76, every presidential campaign and convention since '68. Reporting on McGovern and Sergeant Shriver, '72, Jimmy Carter, '76. When Plante and Leslie Stahl shared the White House beat, Stahl describes Plante as the best-liked member of the press corps. Decent, easygoing, even when all 6 of his sons, Michael and Chris, would call in one day. I love that man, Leslie told me this weekend. I respect him as a reporter, and I will feel that way always. She described their relationship like Felix and Oscar. If anybody's been to the White House and they know the facilities for the press, keeping the First Amendment safe is a little tight in those tight quarters. But Bill is a little fastidious, for those of you who don't know. And when Jackie Adams joined the White House Corps, Jackie is an African American, and she got a load of Bill's cleanup routine of spritz and mop, she said with a laugh, "I love watching white men clean." Stahl, I love that story. I love it every time I tell it. Stahl describes Plante as relentless. In every White House briefing, he asks the tough questions. He holds their feet to the fire, and when they don't answer, he follows up and follows up and follows up. When George Bush held a goodbye press conference in the Rose Garden for Karl Rove, Bush was saying, "Oh, so smart, really going to miss him." And Plante's question was, "If he's so smart, how come you lost Congress?" A silence goes over the Rose Garden. Provocative, not disrespectful. Plante has been a witness to history. Geneva, when Ronald Reagan came face to face with the evil empire, meeting Gorbachev for the first time. I still have my keychain from that event. I still use it. Bill's reporting on the Reykjavik summit with Reagan and Gorbachev won him an Emmy. For those of us in the press corps that were there, we like to call that the day Reagan gave away the nuclear store. Remember the cone of silence he and Gorbachev found themselves in? Always a favorite. When you look back at a reporter and his evolution, you see how it began for Bill, and clearly you understand why he deserves this award. He was coming out of Columbia University, a fellowship in '64, and he got hired by CBS. But it was there that he formed his love affair with politics. Sorry, Robin. It was his first love, and it would remain his love. Bill, hired in New York, was then assigned pretty quickly to go down to cover 3 young civil rights workers who went missing in Mississippi. Bill knew the Irish, he knew the Italian, he knew the Polish mindset, but he'd never been further south than St. Louis. Mississippi, other side of the moon for Bill. Interviewing Martin Luther King as he marched from Selma to Montgomery, there was a tectonic shift in the plates that made up Bill Plante. He did 4 tours of duty in Vietnam, winning an Emmy for his coverage of the fall of Vietnam and Americans being evacuated. He's earned a lot of awards for his investigative reports. He was one of 2 American journalists in Tehran covering the revolution after the Shah left. Being at the gates of hell, it changes a man. It forms who they are as journalists and human beings. No one really knows Bill's politics, interestingly enough, but they do know this. He is the most knowledgeable wine connoisseur on the planet. Fact, there were many times, maybe several, I don't want to exaggerate, during the Reagan White House that I was looking for Plante, only to learn that he was doing a wine tasting with several top White House officials and Mike Deaver. He was connected. He was protecting our First Amendment. Marlon Fitzwater said to me earlier this week, Plante was the constant face staring at me in the front row, a steady voice, tough questions, and honest journalism. Mike McCurry said, I screamed at every reporter in the White House, except Bill Plante. Bill Plante was fair-minded across all party lines. McCurry said there was a guide that actually gets handed from one press secretary to another, and it said, avoid all reporters at all costs, except Bill Plante. He has the largest expense account in D.C. Plante is a man who doesn't take things lightly. He's serious. When he got a tip one night that a contingent of Marines was about to land on Grenada, he took Terry Hunt, working for Associated Press, so he would have a witness, up to see Larry Speaks. Is there a military movement by U.S. troops into Grenada? Speaks went to check with National Security Council No. 2, John Poindexter. Love that name. Knock it down hard came back the word. Preposterous came back the answer. The next morning, 1,900 troops invaded Grenada. The White House lied to Bill Plante. The explanation: to rescue Americans, including medical students down there, who were in danger of leftist thugs running the government. Other Caribbean nations, we were told, had requested it to prevent a Cuban, Russian-inspired takeover. The reports over the next days, however, were as much about the White House censorship as it was about the invasion of Grenada. Reporters weren't allowed on the island. The information flow is controlled. There were accusations of a cover-up, and the administration was releasing its own videotape without a single frame of combat footage. What would prove to be accurate? Bill found medical students weren't in danger. The Soviets weren't intent on taking over the island. It was a diversion, most likely, from tough times of American soldiers in Beirut. That was the conventional wisdom. Bill Plante had been lied to. He fought publicly and loudly about the rights of journalism. It was a battle royale over the First Amendment. Bill led the fight. He's still fighting. He got in a little hot soup, by calling today's White House the state-run media. He's right. They shoot and distribute their own stills and video without any journalist being present. He's still fighting. Chairman of CBS News, Jeff Fager, says, this is a theme, you'll hear it, "I love Bill Plante. He represents everything we stand for at CBS News. He is a first-class reporter who knows how to chase down the facts and report them accurately and with dignity. He is also a very rare breed in our world. He's a great reporter who happens to be a real gentleman, and that's hard to come by." There's not much that can top a Lifetime Achievement Award, but there is another honor coming up for Bill. Bill has been asked to host the Heart's Delight and Wine Tasting Auction for 2014. I think this award's better. I have known you my entire adult life. You are a friend, but more than that, you're an inspiration. I will never forget, because we were doing a documentary about Robin, his wife, going into Vietnam. Bill went with her, not as the reporter, but as a husband. Robin wanted to see if she could find out what happened to her father, who was shot down over Vietnam and missing in action. Bill went with her. You are an inspiration to me and all your colleagues at CBS News. We are incredibly proud of you today. I'd like to watch this phenomenal video. Roll those tapes.
I came to the White House for CBS in 1997, and I was plenty nervous. Not about the job or the president, but about the man that I would sit next to every day. Bill Plante had forgotten more about the beat than I would ever learn. I had watched him on television as he marched with King from Selma, took fire in Vietnam, and pursued every president from Reagan on. But I discovered that day that the giant was a gentleman, generous and wise, not a fellow correspondent, but a mentor, eager to help and show the way. A generation of reporters has learned from Bill Plante, but the smartest ones went to school on Plante's zest for life. Maybe that's what CBS saw 50 years ago in the first audition reel.
How do you do? My name is Bill Plante, and I'd like to show you some of my work. This is Bill Plante reporting from the staging area of tomorrow's big parade.
Well, Bill, you got the job, and we are so grateful that you did. As a young man, you helped us understand our nation's defining conflicts. Conflicts at home.
Have all the activities of the past weeks in Selma come to fruition now? Is this the grand climax?
I would say this and its culmination in the march on the Capitol on Thursday.
And conflicts abroad.
Today they get their uniforms. Tomorrow they'll go into training, and soon they'll become part of Vietnam's 615,000 men under arms.
You told us about the fall of the Shah and about our country's finest political traditions before proving your prowess on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Did you make a mistake in sending arms to Tehran, sir?
No, and I'm not taking any more questions.
This is the CBS Sunday Night News. Bill Plante reporting. Good evening.
You commanded the anchor chair for 7 years and had some fun on the diplomatic circuit. There were 3 more tours at the White House where you were always striving for perfect attendance.
That was very impressive.
Are you likely to be content drifting slowly off stage? Or do you think that someday you will want to run for office, some office, again? Or are you willing to tell us this afternoon, sir, that you will never again run for elective office?
I don't have any idea.
Well, Governor, the conventional wisdom was that if you'd had a blowout tonight, you'd have been the nominee, no questions asked. You could have taken 4-day weekends between now and the convention.
Well, looks like I'm going to be working for a while.
I'm told that a plane went into the Pentagon and they're chasing us off the grounds here. Mr. President, do you believe Osama bin Laden's denial that he had anything to do with this?
No question, he is the prime suspect.
It begins, sir, to look like you're campaigning and like you're following the Harry Truman model against the do-nothing Congress instead of negotiating. Are you negotiating? Will you?
I am always open to negotiations. What is also true is they need to do something. Bill Plante? No? Bill's not here? That's shocking.
And Bill, while we know your patience has been tested,
well, that's just fine. What am I supposed to do about it standing here? You dumb son of a bitch. Bill Plante, CBS News, the White House. That's it. No more.
we have never worried about you finding a way to decompress.
Great color, lovely light fruit taste. There's nothing like a ride in a hot air balloon. This is so cool. This is Bill Plante, CBS News, proving you're never too old to do something stupid. Politics, general assignment, writing, editing, reporting, air work, you name it, I'd like to do it. Bill Plante, CBS News, Miami. Bill Plante, CBS News, Vienna. Bill Plante, CBS News, Berlin. Bill Plante, CBS News, Ho Chi Minh City. Bill Plante, CBS News, with the president in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. For CBS This Morning, Bill Plante in Phnom Penh.
It's been one incredible run, Mr. Plante, and we could not be more proud.
Congratulations, Bill. After years of making the news about everyone else in Washington, you're finally the lead story. And even though you didn't seek it, you have earned it. In 50 years at CBS News, and in nearly every White House since I was just a college student, you have been one of the most reliable sources for the big question on everybody's mind. What the heck is going on around here? On air and around the world, you've responded with dogged pursuit of the truth and passionate defense of honest reporting. Your standards of integrity and decency set a tone that generations of journalists would do well to follow. So thank you for never being afraid to give us the news we need to hear. Congratulations again. And don't start going easy on me now.
Not much of a chance of that, Mr. President. Bill, I think the only thing we've left out is a shout-out to Robin. Success like yours is a team effort, and what a wonderful, full partner she has been in what you've achieved. Bill, you ask three things about every story. Is it right? Is it fair? Is it honest? As the President said, a new generation of journalists will do well to follow your lead and your love of life. Thanks, dear friend, for making CBS News what it is today.
Please join me in congratulating CBS News White House correspondent and the 2014 Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Bill Plante. I just want to thank Jillian Hughes, Chloe Arensberg, Kim Schaefer, and Ward Sloan for that wonderful tape.
Words fail me. Almost. Thank you to the RTDNF for this honor, and a very special thank you to my dear friend Susan Zirinsky, a person who, like my wife Robin, can be counted on
to make sure that I never get too impressed with myself. Susan and I worked together at the beginning of the Reagan administration, and she taught this arrogant young reporter that putting pictures in the story was just every bit as important as the words that I was writing. And the point here, I guess, is that whatever I've accomplished in 50 years at CBS News was never on my own. It was always as part of a team. Ours is a collaborative craft. I've depended on producers like Susan and Bill Owens, Ward Sloan and Max McClellan, Jim McGlinchey, Brett Hovell, and many others. They knew how to tell a story with pictures. They offered a critical second set of eyes on scripts. I've depended on technicians like George Christian, who I understand is back there, who knew how to use light and sound to advantage. I've depended on editors who knew how to add visual sparkle even when the subject was ordinary. The pieces that we produced together were much the better for our collaboration. When I started at CBS News in 1964, the American public trusted its government, by and large, and its journalists. Then came the Vietnam War and Watergate, and the attitude of both reporters and the public shifted to skepticism and has now grown into distrust. When I began covering the White House in 1981, the news on the 3 broadcast networks every night at 6:30 Eastern was generally the consensus product of the journalism establishment, what they thought it should be. The public had few other places to go. Today, of course, you can get news from many sources, and choice is good. But it also means that you can choose the news you want to hear, whether it's been rigorously validated or not. And even though there are now many voices competing for your attention, even the White House, as you've heard, offers its own video of material that we are not allowed to cover. It's still more important than ever for us to live by the best practices of journalism: fact-checking, attribution, and rigorous questioning. It's more important than ever to fight constantly to protect First Amendment rights. You've heard tonight about some of the challenges that everybody has faced this year. To make clear, too, that those rights are not so much ours as journalists as they are the rights of all the people. It's guaranteed not to just us, but to all Americans. That's why I'm proud to work at CBS News. CBS News remains committed to hard news, morning, evening, on the web, social media, working every day to reveal the why as well as the what. I've been here 50 years, and it's great to look back. I've loved all of it. But it's a lot more important to look forward. We have to learn from the past, but we also have to embrace the future. Thank you all so much.
Bill, I want to just add my congratulations. I worked with Bill, or against Bill, in the Reagan White House for 6 years. When I came to the White House in 1982, Bill gave me 3 pieces of advice that served me well then, and I must say have served me well ever since. 1, when you see food, eat it. 2, when you see a bathroom, use it. When you see a bus, get on it. If you think about it, that can get you through almost every situation in life. Right? Exactly. Still true. Except we have to use the bathroom a little more, both of us, now than we used to. Oh, well. The Leonard Seidenberg Award is named for the late chief correspondent for broadcasting and cable magazine. Len had a reputation as a steadfast champion of a free press. Here to present the Len Seidenberg Award is the senior executive producer prime time for NBC News, David Korpa.
glad we just had a chance to look at the career of a great reporter, because now it's my pleasure to introduce another great reporter. I'm very happy that the RTDNF is honoring Lester Holt tonight. I'm more impressed that they actually convinced him somehow to take a night off and come to this dinner. Taking days and nights off is not in the DNA of Lester Holt. I don't know if you know, but around NBC, he's known as the hardest working man at 30 Rock, and I can prove it. Just think about the weekends. He starts on Friday anchoring Dateline. On Saturdays and Sundays, he anchors both the Today program in the morning and nightly news at night. Then on Sundays, he's usually back with Dateline again Sunday night. Then you'd think Monday, Tuesday, he takes those days off. No. Usually, he's often filling in for Matt Lauer or Brian Williams, or the networks got him, sending him to Sochi to anchor Olympic coverage or stuff like that. And if he's not doing any of that, he's doing his real day job. He's out being a reporter. The last known recorded Lester Holt vacation happened a few months ago. He went to Chicago to our station in MAQ to co-anchor their morning news show with his son Stephen. That's his idea of a vacation. Besides all that, Lester usually leads NBC's coverage of major breaking news around the world. Just in the last couple of years, here's some locations that he reported live from that may ring a bell. Haiti, Cairo, South Africa, Afghanistan, Newtown, Boston, Rome, Fukushima. He was our lead guy there. There's something important to know about Lester, too, that makes him a deserving recipient of this First Amendment Award. All this hard work that he does, all this sort of crazy hard work, is not motivated by an endless appetite for airtime or by some desire to display stamina. He's driven by a sense of duty to his profession and to his fellow citizens. Lester is really aware that being a journalist and being able to work within the protective constitutional embrace we're talking about tonight is not a reward granted, but a responsibility to be fulfilled. That responsibility is not just to attract an audience, but to serve it. And in fact, Lester's gift in many ways is when he looks in that camera, he doesn't really imagine an audience. He sees his friends and his neighbors looking back at him, needing information, explanation, understanding, all the things journalists are supposed to provide. Sometimes fulfilling that means providing a calm, knowing, and steady voice when people are under duress in an immediate developing catastrophe. Sometimes that means responding to people caught in a continuing crisis. And I think there's a part of Lester's work that people are not as familiar with. For instance, just in the last couple of years working with him at Dateline, Lester has reported, despite all the anchoring, all the live around the world, he's reported in-depth hour-long stories from Chicago on school violence, from Colorado on middle-class poverty, from a small Georgia town, structural unemployment, and recently from his own backyard in New York City, on why working-class kids endure high rates of asthma while nearby richer kids who breathe basically the same air don't. Those are not exactly the high-profile, high-adrenaline, natural TV stories, but they're stories that require exactly the right combination of empathetic and critical reporting, and that's what Lester does. And they're stories, by the way, that can inspire change. In his own kind of humble, quiet way, Lester fights as fiercely for those stories to get on primetime television as anybody I know. He loves his job, and it's really fun working with somebody who loves their job and appreciates how lucky we all are. There's one more thing you should know about Lester. None of his colleagues at NBC News really like him. You can see that in this video.
We first met Lester in 1979 in San Francisco. The news director came in and told us that he had this young kid he was hiring from Sacramento. Next day, Lester Holt walks in the room. He's a 20-year-old kid. And by the end of that first day, he convinced us all that he'd be a great reporter.
From Kennedy Airport, Lester Holt, Channel 2 News.
I first started working with Lester back in the late 1980s, early 1990s at WBBM. He was unflappable in breaking news situations. He was tireless, would work any shift that you'd want him to, anytime. time. We sent him to El Salvador, Haiti, Somalia. Even back then, the same qualities that the network saw in him years later, we saw at the local level.
Lester was the anchor on Dayside MSNBC whenever there was breaking news. He was the reliable, solid news presence on MSNBC.
And welcome to our ongoing coverage of the unforgettable Decision 2000. I'm Lester Holt.
In the year 2000, that was the year with the Gore-Bush recount. It went on forever. The election never ended. And it was Lester who was our lead person, anchoring all of that breaking news of that landmark election.
This is our big debut weekend. We are now the official Weekend Today anchors.
He became a part of the Today Show family when he started to host the weekend show. You watched him on the air and you knew right off the bat that this was a guy who was going to make a mark.
I'd always been a big fan. I had watched him for years and I just really respected him a lot as a journalist. The minute I set foot in Studio 1A, Lester made me feel so comfortable and immediately made me feel like I was a part of that team.
The worst thing about Lester is the best thing about Lester. He always says yes. He does his morning program on the weekends. He does Dateline, which is a mixture of mysteries and investigative stuff. And he does straight hard breaking news on the newscast.
We joke a lot that Lester is the hardest working man in news. Truth be told, it's not a joke. He wears so many different hats, but he wears them all well, and I think that's just a sign of his many strengths.
If I had to describe Lester as a journalist, it would be genuine. A big story happens, and he wants to go. He wants to experience what's going on.
This crowd is realizing that what they are experiencing now is, in fact, a taste of freedom.
He's an excellent journalist. He likes to be there and tell the story firsthand, boots on the ground. That's how he works, and I really admire that.
I remember arriving in Haiti on the tarmac, and it was tumultuous to say the least. And there was Lester anchoring the network's coverage.
With as many as 200,000 people feared dead, the United Nations today called this disaster historic.
In the middle of this chaos, he is just flawless.
Lester is truly passionate about the men and women that serve overseas. He has spent a lot of time in Afghanistan.
They're 100% Americans.
Wherever there is a great story to be told, he wants to be the person telling it.
It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun watching Lester's career over the years. He obviously is a pro in every endeavor.
If you want to talk about Lester Holt, the first thing you have to say is he is a journalist. And you almost put a period right there.
He doesn't wait for someone to bring him the story. He goes there so he can bring it to you. That's a journalist in my book.
His breadth of work is phenomenal. He can do anything.
Lester, it's my understanding that this award each year goes to someone who has distinguished himself or herself in this field. And so my only comment to the people giving you this award is, what took you so long? You should have gotten it long ago.
Well, okay, Mr. Lauer, we're going to correct that right now. Let's give the 2014 Leonard Zeidenberg First Amendment Award to NBC's Lester Holt.
You got to do the picture. Picture, of course. All night I've been sitting there and people have been getting the award, and all I want to do is photobomb them. I don't know what's wrong with me. Did anybody? Nobody thought to do that. All right. Well, thanks very much. You know, there's just nothing greater than hearing your colleagues say the kinds of things I just heard there. It's very touching and very moving. David, thanks so much for the kind words and the wonderful introduction. Dateline was the most recent addition to my NBC News portfolio, and I've learned a lot from David about long-form reporting. He is the best, and it's been a pleasure working with you under your guidance and leadership. Also, Liz Cole, who was our EP of Dateline, who's with us as well tonight. Liz, thanks to you. And, of course, Dateline is just one of my gigs. When you have 3 shows, you have a big posse, so say hello to Jamie Kraft, who produces Weekend Nightly News, and Dee Dee Thomas, who produces Weekend Today. And I also do, by the way, small parties, bar mitzvahs, weddings. So I'll leave my card here, and please pick one up at the end of the night. Happy to work for you as well. Proud to have a lot of my family with me tonight. My sister Donna, my brother-in-law Barry are here. My wife Carol, who certainly lived some of those moments you saw in that tape from a very different and in many cases a more difficult perspective. It is not easy being married to folks who do what we do. Carol has supported me every step of the way in this journey and made an awful lot of sacrifices along the way. And Carol, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and it's just one of the many reasons that I love you so much. What was weird about that, I'm not actually sure where you're seating. I think I was actually looking at another woman when I said that. But it was you the words were for. No, I won't call you. No, but and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, Carol. I am, no, not the call part, the other part. That's me getting deeper and deeper into the hole. I am humbled. I am very humbled to accept this award. And as I look around the landscape of our business, I realize there are any number of my colleagues and peers who deserve this recognition as much, if not more, than I do. But I guess it's kind of like college admissions. If you get an acceptance letter from Harvard, despite a less than stellar SAT score, you don't ask the questions. You just take it and act like you belong. So that's what I'm going to do here tonight. And it's pretty tough because this is a pretty amazing roster of talent. It's a pretty incredible fraternity I'm surrounded by here this evening, and I am so honored. Watching that tape brought back a lot of great memories, and it also confirmed in my mind the advice I like to give to a lot of young people who come up to me and say, well, I want to be an anchor. I want to be the next Matt Lauer, the Brian Williams, or Lester Holt. And I'm flattered, but I always kind of bring them back to earth and explain, you know what? Being an anchor is pretty cool. It's prestigious, generally a bigger paycheck. You have a little more of an editorial voice. But when I think of the most exciting, the most memorable, the most rewarding times in my career, it wasn't sitting behind an anchor desk. It was being out there. It was covering the stories that mattered, to be where the news was being made. My mentor, the late legendary New York newsman Jerry Nachman, hired me for that radio job in San Francisco when I was 20. 18 months later, he took me to New York City and put me on Channel 2. He hired me, I'm pretty sure, for my passion, because it couldn't have been my experience. I was a college dropout. Up to that point, I had been a DJ at a country and western radio station called Crack Radio. No lie, KRAK Radio. Can you imagine Crack Radio in 2014? I can't. It's all right. Just a thought. I did that radio gig. Later, they gave me the keys to a mobile news unit and said, hey, guess what? You're a reporter now. So it was Jerry Nachman who really taught me how to be a reporter, taught me how to be a newsman. And the most important thing he told me was that the highest calling in what we do is being a reporter. And that has been really the guiding principle throughout my career. You know, you can call any fancy title you want, principal anchor, executive producer, news director. At its essence, we are all reporters. That's what we should be. That's what we should aspire to be. And that's what makes us good at what we do. Most of us in this business recall that moment when we thought maybe, or we said it, God forbid, out loud, I would pay them to be on TV. I would pay them to work in that newsroom to cover those stories. Of course, today our agents wouldn't hear of such talk. But isn't there a tiny part of you sometimes that misses that wide-eyed, ambitious kid that you once were, who walked into that newsroom for the first time and looked around and said, this is exactly what I want to do? Well, guess what? We're doing it. And guess what? They're paying us. I just want to close out with a couple of words to the young people here tonight. I know there's some scholarship winners here. And I want you to know that when I was coming up, when Bill Plante was coming up, when Chris Wallace were coming up, we made a lot of mistakes, but we didn't have to live them on YouTube and have people sitting around their computers laughing at our mistakes. We didn't have to click on Twitter and see someone bashing us or snarking at us because we mispronounced the name of a town or some politician. It's a different world that you're coming up in, but I just want to say on behalf of all of us in the business that we recommit to your success, that you are important. It is a meaner environment, but you need to succeed. And one of the things that allowed me to succeed were people in that newsroom when I was 20, when I was 22 years old, who weren't mocking me or laughing at me, but they extended a helping hand. They were mentors. They were supportive. They corrected me when I needed to be corrected, but they also encouraged me. And I say on behalf of all those, and I hope I can speak on all those of us who are in the business, that we want to be that person for you, because the future of our business at this critical time depends on it. We support you, and we wish you nothing but success. I want to thank you for this wonderful honor tonight. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your attention, everybody.
So I was talking to my executive producer this afternoon, and I was telling her about the fact that I was going to be emceeing this evening, and she asked who the honorees were, and when I mentioned Lester Holt, she said, well, he's the hardest working person in television. So I said, well, what about me? And she said, you compared to Lester Holt? So Lester, thank you for that. I also noticed there was a rush to the back of you probably didn't notice this, a rush to the back of the room when you started talking about crack radio. I think some of the news executives here were thinking about seeing if they could copyright that name. This brings us to our final award of the evening, the First Amendment Leadership Award, which is presented to a business or government leader who has made a significant contribution to protecting freedom of the press. And this year's recipient has done just that. To present this award, please join me in welcoming the Vice President and Senior News Executive at Gannett Broadcasting, Rob Downey. Rob.
Certainly no pressure following Chris Wallace, Bill Plante, and Lester Holt. Every day, I am fortunate enough to work for a company that fights to protect the First Amendment, that believes that watchdog reporting is at the center of great journalism, and has a legal department that fights with you to get stories on the air when other people may say the risk is just too great. I am also very fortunate to work with Dave Luigi. Now, don't get me wrong, some days that is very hard to admit. But those of us that work with Dave know we are working with someone very special. Dave has incredible passion for the television business and for local journalism. He believes that our industry has an obligation to fight the status quo, and each of us has the obligation to make our communities better places to live. So as I prepared to introduce Dave, I decided I was going to share a story with you. And I can tell you very specifically, the date was Friday, October 4th, 2013. It was early in the afternoon, and Dave is swamped. He has a million things to do before a 1 p.m. meeting that Friday afternoon with our business manager, Julie Heskett. It is a 6-hour budget meeting on a Friday afternoon. This man knows how to party. I'm standing outside his office waiting for when the phone rang, and Kathy Burns answered it and said to him, Lauren Tobia is on the phone. And I turned to Dave and I said, you might want to take this call. And he did. Lauren said, Dave, I just want to tell you that this year, the RTDNF would like to honor you with the First Amendment Leadership Award. Now, for those of us that have worked with Dave for many years, and I can say this, I saw something I had never seen before. Dave was speechless. His face went from total disbelief to total jubilation. He was thrilled. He walked out of his office. He said, Kathy, please call Julie and tell her the budget meeting is going to be done another day. Tell whoever calls that I won't be in this afternoon. I'm taking the afternoon off. And by the way, that was a first. He then said, in one of the true unbelievable statements of all time, Rob, we're going out to lunch, and it's going to be outside the building. Another first. So Dave and I went to lunch, and for 2 hours, Dave talked about journalism and how that is what defines Gannett. He talked about what this award meant to all the folks that work so hard within Gannett. He talked about the past winners, and he beamed at how much this award meant to him. As a matter of fact, Dave was so excited that day that he left his wallet in his office, and I got to pay for lunch. Dave, from all of us at Gannett Broadcasting, congratulations, and here's a brief look at Dave's career.
Certain words,
character,
come up again and again.
Visionary,
When the topic of conversation
thinker,
is Dave Lucci.
I think Dave Lucci is an incredibly energetic person. He's a real visionary, a real leader. He cares deeply about journalism, is a fierce defender of the First Amendment.
Character, integrity, and passion. I think that embodies what he's all about.
Big strategic thinker. That's been the case at all levels of his career, from the time he was a news director to a corporate executive.
Words like ambitious are applied to young men who become news directors at major market television stations while barely into their 30s. A VP of news in the nation's capital, news director, then general manager at King TV in Seattle, and barely into his 40s. There's a word for that, too.
He's just sort of a dynamo, always in action, always thinking, and always with good ideas and always thinking the next step ahead. He's a leader, but he also has vision that goes beyond what are you doing right at that moment.
Vision. Told you you'd hear that word again.
It's what makes our communities better.
Vision that carried an English major to the executive ranks at Belo, then Gannett. Vision that guided Dave Luigi as Gannett and Belo and their industry-leading television stations have become, in a word, one.
I think that's one of the things he does very well, is to say this is what it is today, but let's not assume that what it is today is what it's going to be tomorrow. So what are the things that we need to do today, put in place today, to address the challenges as they arise?
We need to be vigilant and intellectually honest about what is a core value and what is an old habit disguised as a value.
He demonstrates a lot of the qualities that you see in a good journalist. He's tenacious, he's honest, he's got courage, he's persistent, and those are the kind of qualities that he's brought to the leadership of Gannett have really, I think, made him really special.
He serves on the National Association of Broadcasters Executive Committee, and his is a voice that when it is uttered, people listen. And that is a quality that is somewhat innate, but also earned.
Focused.
When people talk about Dave,
tough.
You'll hear other words, too.
Intense.
Words that require balance.
Work is a tremendous part of who Dave is, but I also know that he would be the first to say that it's not what you do, it's how you love.
Downey, Dave's wife, and his sons Nash, Adam, and Chance mean more to him than words can say.
What do you remember most when Dave was small?
He had a great sense of humor. He was fun. He really was.
And all industry leaders and fathers should be so blessed to hear these words.
I don't think he's ever heard this from me, but he's actually a pretty cool dude.
I join you in congratulating Dave tonight. The fact that this is from RTDNF means all the more to all of us. He means the world to us as an organization. He means the world to all those of us who consider ourselves his friend. Dave, congratulations.
I congratulate you, Dave, because it's a great award, and I know it means something to you, but I know it also means something to all the people that you represent at the stations and the values it brings.
Dedicated.
All words friends and family have used.
Passionate.
To describe Dave Lucci.
Leader.
And now, add two more. Deserving recipient of the First Amendment Leadership Award.
The greatest honor that he could have bestowed upon him. There's nothing more important to him in the world than being able to say what there is to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Lucci.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the RTDNF for this very humbling honor. As Rob said, it was humbling. We got that call on a Friday afternoon. But as Cecil Walker said in the video, I'm really here as a representative of the great local journalists in our company serving our local communities, now double in size than it was a year ago, every day. And representing all of them tonight through serendipity of scheduling, are 30 news directors from 30 local communities. They're back there in the back row keeping you from leaving early. I want them all to stand up, please. Stand up, gang. They represent this company from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, from Houston in the south to Minneapolis in the north, and from here in D.C. to Seattle in that other Washington. We couldn't be more proud of all of them. And on behalf of all of them, I want to acknowledge and thank our company's president and CEO, Gracia Martori, who provides this company the unquestioned support to fight the good fight every day in the 100-plus local communities we serve and for USA Today. Like any great CEO, she's demanding and questioning, oh yes she is, of our team, but never once, never, has she questioned the millions we spend every year on FOIA requests, court cases, and the like across this country. Also at this table is one of the greatest advocates for reporters' freedoms of our generation. She does it with little to no fanfare, but to the fights that Gary and Robin talked about earlier, she's been in the middle of them on behalf of everybody in this room, and everyone in Gannett knows how well reporters and our democracy have been served by our in-house First Amendment counsel, Barbara Wall. Barbara, please stand. Thank you, Barbara. Also at this table, two great collaborative friends and business partners of mine, our General Counsel, Todd Maiman, and the publisher of USA Today, Larry Kramer. Thanks for coming tonight, guys. And over at this table, my good friend, our former chairman and CEO, Craig DeBow, who was nice enough to hire me back to Gannett. Craig, thank you for coming tonight. And it's a special night. We're one of those American families that's all over this country, from Arizona to Connecticut, so it's really cool for us to have them all here together. My brother Rick, my sister Joan, our sons Adam, Chance, and Nash, our daughter-in-law Valerie, who's expecting our first grandchild in a matter of weeks, our lovely daughter-in-law Valerie, and Nash, I think you're a cool dude too. And my final thanks, and notice Lester, I know where she's sitting, is to my love of my life and my best friend Downey. Thank you for honoring the First Amendment in our home when you've had the right to go Vladimir Putin on me thousands of times. So I know I'm the last speaker between you and the exits tonight, so I'll exercise my freedom of speech judiciously. But, you know, represented in this room tonight are the finest national and international news organizations in the world. And we are proud to be partners with all of them. You know, but having lived in D.C. 2 times now, I've noticed that too many national decision makers in the media live in the echo chamber of D.C. and Manhattan, and some have never lived anywhere else. But 97% of this country does not live inside the Beltway or in New York. They live in the heartland. They live in 50 different states with their own cultures, their own legislatures, and now, as our stations in Denver and Seattle can attest, their own marijuana laws as well. No national media organization can or will ever cover all those critical local issues. Take, for instance, the current makeup of our U.S. House of Representatives. Gerrymandering and redistricting in the state legislatures has changed the U.S. House of Representatives forever, and for better or worse, the direction of this country. Which is all to say, the continued health of our republic requires a robust and healthy business model of local journalism in every community, looking under rocks, staking out the state capitol and city hall, comforting the afflicted, and holding the powerful accountable. At Gannett, one of our strategic pillars is called Reinventing Local Journalism in the Digital Age. On one hand, it is a business imperative, but it's also an obligation. The business model of local journalism has to evolve. Our democracy depends on it. And for all of the wonderful developments that IP technology has brought us, and they are marvelous, there is no cavalry of local web journalists coming over the hill to save the day. It is up to us and other like-minded companies like ours. I want to shout out to Jordan Wertlieb and Hearst, who share that same fight that we do. It's up to companies like us to figure it out. It's up to us to embrace new technologies and consumer revolutions like social media. As we like to say at Gannett, social media is God's gift to television, and local broadcast journalism too, if we're smart enough to see it and embrace it. Local broadcasting is a regulated business, and we willingly accept the public interest obligations required of us. They're core to who we are and what we do. But that also means we have some business limitations. Because of standards, we can't run on our prime time, nor can our network partners, Breaking Bad or House of Cards. And again, we willingly accept that limitation. But policymakers need to understand that impacts our ability to compete against many other programmers who don't invest in local journalism anywhere. So does that mean we're asking for help from the government? Absolutely not. We can't, of course, ask the government to involve itself in the content of speech. But we can ask that our government facilitate free expression and use free speech as a guidepost and prism for regulatory action rather than political expediency. It is not just a communications policy question or a copyright question. Fostering free expression requires that content creators be able to control their content. The First Amendment is no one's constituent. It doesn't have a political action committee, and it doesn't vote. So it is hardly a surprise that it doesn't have a voice in Washington. But I would ask of all of you in this room, what voice could possibly be more important? Thank you again for this tremendous honor tonight.
Dave, congratulations. I said at the beginning this is not the Oscars, and we're going to get you out of here before 9:25 tonight. What a great night this is. What proof positive of the strength of our business, how inspiring our heritage, and how bright our future still is. Let's have one more round of applause for all of the honorees tonight. And please join me, this is in the great tradition of electronic journalism, we'll have a commercial now, in thanking all of our sponsors for the evening, especially our diamond level sponsor, the Gannett Company, and our platinum level sponsors, the Hearst Corporation and Cox Reps. Thank you all for coming. It's 9:24:50. We'll see you next year.